Austin, and I'm an upholsterer. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably want to know how to make a piped cushion, or you're just watching it for the sake of watching it. Either way, thank you. In our last tutorial, we ran through one of these, which is a unpiped scatter cushion, or as some people call it, a throw cushion, or throw pillow. In this video, I'm going to go through how to make one of these, which is exactly the same, but it's piped, hence why it's called a piped cushion. So yeah, please like and subscribe, and stick around to find out how to make one of these. Let's go! Okay, before we get started, first you're going to need a sewing machine, the fabric you want to use, some piping cord and a piping foot for your sewing machine, some zip and a zip head, and at least one pair of scissors. I've got two. Okay, so first things first, we've got the fabric laid out on the bench. I grab my piping ruler, which is just a long, I think it's 2 inches wide ruler. Get that laid out. I already had this fabric cut on the bias, which is where you cut it diagonally. It just helps when you work with piping to cut it that way so that it goes around corners and curves nice and easily. Grab a pen and try to draw a line. I think that one will probably do. Let's do another line. So I'm doing 2 lengths of piping for this cushion. I don't need this much, but it'll make sense later. I realised that line hadn't actually marked very well, so we'll try again with the same pen. Is that working? No, that hasn't worked very well at all, has it? So we'll just give up with this pen, throw that in the bin, grab a ballpoint pen from over here. You could use chalk. I prefer pens. Once chalk's marked, it's generally there anyway. It's a nightmare to get out. A pen is just as hard to get out. I prefer pens. So we'll redraw these lines. And realise that's worked much better. So now we'll go over here, grab some scissors, and we'll cut this piping out. Once we've remembered to mark the ends, just so I can keep the pile going in the same direction when I join these bits together. A little snippy down the lines. We grab these, move them out of the way. I'm just going to chuck them by the sewing machine. And try and figure out what we actually want here. So, coming back with the shorter ruler and the square. Changing up the angles, we're gonna find the side of our ruler that has the numbers on it. I really need to get a new one. This one is not great. So now I didn't like the selvage on this roll of fabric, so I'm gonna line my ruler up against it and then draw a line, and that's where I'm gonna start from. I'm going to get my square, because I'm making a square cushion and we want our square cushions to be square. Then we take the square, stick up against the ruler at the length that we want, square it up with that line that I just drew. Take my time doing it because I want it to be good. Draw that line, and then over here measure the same length, and then Do that again, coming up from the corner. And then using my square to finish it off, I'll just square up against that line and then come down and draw a line there, giving me my square. Now I'm just checking the pile direction, and we're gonna start snipping this out. Change my mind. Yep, we'll go this way. Back to the camera. And then across here. Get rid of that. Just throw that on the floor. Up here. And then I'm gonna double check the pile direction and then mark the top. You want the pile to go down, ideally. So if you're working with a velvet or anything that's got a pile, it should go down. So then we'll take this, flip it over, and then just copy that. We could measure it out again, but I find it's easy to flip it over the way that it's going to be sewn together and then just cut around it, because then you know it's going to be the same. So if it is slightly off square, it's not going to matter too much. So we'll just cut up here and then across there. Throw that on the floor again. Who needs a bin? And keep going up here. Move that out of the way and then finish off with this last cut. And we'll pull this down towards me, grab my pen, pull that over and then mark the top on the other side. And making sure that it's all lined up together. Both sides are exactly the same. I'm just measuring, I'm measuring in 3 inches from each edge, but depending on the size of your cushion will depend on how far in you come. And then just giving that a little notch on both pieces so that I can line them up later, and this is where our zip's gonna go. Just get rid of those, and then we're ready to start sewing. Okay, now over at the sewing machine, we're going to grab our piping. And then we take our 2 ends. I realised that I had both the marked ends, so you want one marked end, one non-marked end. And then you stick them together at a right angle and then sew through that diagonally. This is one way to join piping. You can do it just facing them up against each other, but I like to do it this way. And then you just trim off the excess and any loose threads. Get rid of that, just throw that on the floor. I throw things on the floor a lot. I have a bin, but throughout the day I'll just make more work for myself by sweeping up. Now I'm going to take my piping cord and wrap it in the middle of my strip of fabric. Line that up under the sewing machine, under the foot. With the piping foot, it's got a groove in it, which the piping cord runs through, and just start sewing. You notice I often reach for the hand wheel while I'm sewing. It's just to make sure that when I stop, the needle is down. It just stops me accidentally moving the fabric out of the way and having to realign everything. pull some more piping cord, wrapping it up, sewing through, getting my fingers nice and close to that needle. Surprisingly, never sewn through my fingers. Hopefully I never will. Now it's time to take one of the face panels, and then grabbing our piping cord that we just sewed together, figure out where our joins are going to sit. Ideally, you want the joins to be on the sides of the cushion, because no one wants to see a massive join on the top. But equally, if you have a join on the bottom, it can interfere with sewing your zip in. So ideally, any joins, you want them to be on the side. So I figure out that I want my joins where they are, snip off that excess there, and throw it on the floor. And then, getting that roughly where I want it, I will line up the piping cord with the groove on the foot, drop my needle, drop the foot, and away we go. And then realised that I had lost the thread from the needle, so I've just got to stick that back through. Drop that needle, and away we go. So what I'm doing here is the camera angle is awful. I thought it'd be a better camera angle, it wasn't. I'm just cutting little relief cuts in the piping, just up to the cord, and then just turn that around, drop the foot, and then just keep sewing. Okay, so I moved the camera because I thought that was going to make a better camera angle to show you what I was doing, but I was wrong, so I'll show you now. So basically, what I was doing on those corners was just cutting little reliefs in the piping. You can cut a few, and then you just stop half-inch away from that corner and turn it around and keep going. Yeah, I thought the camera angle was going to be better. It wasn't. I was wrong. But let's keep going. Okay, so we'll take that, we've got our other piece, and lining up these notches to one another. This is where we're going to sew in our zip. So get that lined up. And then bring that over to the machine. Line the piping up in the groove of the foot, drop the needle, and then we'll get sewing. get to the notches, we'll stop and then give that little lock stitch, just going backwards and forwards a few times. Lift that. Sometimes I stop and trim that off, sometimes I just drag it straight across. Just depends on what I feel like at the time. And then same on this end, give it a little lock stitch, backwards and forwards, and then go all the way to the corner, and then just lock that off, and then pull that out, trim it off, and good to go. Now we're ready for the zip, which I am looking for. Remember, it's on a shelf behind me over here. And then coming over here, trim off a length of zip that we want, go put that away, because you know, everyone loves a tidy workshop, except for all the things that I've thrown on the floor so far. And looking for the zip heads. Grab ourselves one of these. Now, in the last cushion tutorial, I briefly showed you how to put a zip head on a length of zip. It's not always as easy as it looks, and I actually struggled quite a lot to get this one on. And I mean, I'm gonna always try to leave the bits where I struggle in, just because, you know, even people that have been doing this for years still sometimes struggle, and that's okay. You'll probably struggle too. It's fine. You'll get there eventually. You know, when I first started out as an upholsterer, I had no idea what I was doing. I was awful. And if I'm honest, I still don't think I'm great, but I work it every day and strive to be the best that I can be. And, you know, it's taken me this whole motivational speech just to get the zip head even close to one. There we go. We got it. And flipping that over. Trim off the loose thread. Now we want to get that so that the zip is just on the inside of the, not inside, the outside of the pipe, on the edge of the piping, but so that it'd be on the outside of the cushion. At this point it'd be to the left of the piping. And we, just the same as on the unpiped cushion, we're just gonna sew that across, keeping it tight to the edge. Just let that zip run through the groove of the piping foot along with the piping. And then we get to the end. Realise that we need to move that zip head out of the way. So we'll just pull the whole lot around after fumbling for a minute. There we go. And then stick that needle back down and just finish off till the end. And get that a little lock backwards and forwards. Trim off those loose threads. Now, at this point, I like to change my foot just to a standard presser foot. You can do it with the piping foot on. Some people use a zipper foot. This is just how I like to do it. So I'll get that tightened up, put that away, and then flipping that over again. You might need to, I actually sewed a little bit too far, so I had to do a little bit of trimming which I'll realise in a moment that that is too far. So we'll just give that a little snip. And again, it's okay to make mistakes. It's how we learn. I've been doing this for years. I've made, I don't know how many cushions in my time as an upholsterer. Some are easier than others. Some days I can get in a flow and run loads out at a time. Some days it takes me an hour just to sew one. It's not a race, you just work at it until you're happy with it. So moving the zip head out of the way, and then we'll just keep buzzing through this, trying not to sew through our fingers, because I imagine that hurts. If you've ever sewn through your fingers, please let me know in the comments, because some people say that everyone does it at some point, but I'm dreading it happening to me. And yet I still let my fingers get that close to the needle. Alright, then put that in, move that out of the way, give it a little trim. Opening it out, just like on the unpiped cushion. We're going to, on the flat side, not the pipe side, we're just going to sew the seam down to the inside of the zip. But again, I struggled to get it started. I thought I had it, and then I stopped, and I thought, I don't really like that. That's what's going on here. Can I? And then I pulled it out and decided that's not okay. I'm not doing it that. So I'll often, when I'm sewing, I'll stand up and sit down and arrange things, organise what I'm doing, make sure that things sit the way that I want them to sit. And then we can get started again. And then just keeping the, again, you can't see it, but I'm just keeping the edge of the presser foot against the zip and just sewing that seam down, which also stops the zip from slipping through and going too far and falling off. Just give that a little back and forth, lift that up, pull it out, and then we are halfway there. Well, more than halfway there. I'll just neaten this up, take off those loose threads, take off those ends of the zip, because you don't want them hanging around on the inside of your cushion, and then changing the foot back to the piping foot. Some people call it a welting foot. Some people call piping welt. It's just, it is what it's called in your country. Same as I would call this a scatter cushion. Some people would call it a throw pillow. They're the same thing, I think. Could be wrong. I don't know. Let me know. And then just starting on the corner. Right at the bottom by the zip, we're just gonna get this lined up. Making sure that the piped side is on the top, because sometimes the the piping can shrink the panel down a little bit. So with it being on the top, you can just sort of keep a hold of it and stop it sort of pulling itself out of alignment. We'll just buzz through this, so keeping all our edges together. We'll just sew this sucker up, and then that's it, really. Just give that a little lock at the end, lift that up, trim off that thread, and we are finished. Okay, right, that's all filled, which I left out of this video just because I ran through how to do it on that one. But yeah, literally exactly the same, just a few simple extra steps. The only extra bit of equipment you need is a piping foot for your sewing machine, but you can pick them up fairly easily, fairly cheaply, either at your local sewing shop or online. But yeah, if you learnt anything today, please like and subscribe. If you didn't but just enjoyed watching, like and subscribe anyway. Please, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to them. But for now, I'll see you next time.